Alrighty, Miss Yoko. How you doing today?
Fantastic.
So you got a Red Rock show coming up. How are you feeling about that show?
I think always nervous, but very much prepared. I've literally spent the last year preparing for this.
How does the feeling kind of leading up to Red Rocks compare to how you were feeling for your first couple of shows?
Oh man. I guess my first shows were almost 7 to 8 years ago now. It's just such a different feeling. Preparation is always a huge thing for me though. I'm always very dedicated to the preparation stage. So I feel that's still the same, where I just need to step away for a day or two and really lock in. And I think it's always stayed the same. It's just locked in, but it's just turned into how much time can I actually put into things. And now that my career is panning out in my regular job and music, I get more time to actually work on the music part. I spend a lot of hours in here. I won't say waste, but I spend a lot of hours in this chair and right here. So
you just came out with a new project, Critical Hit Music with Skinny Limbs. Can you tell us a little bit about that project and kind of what inspired the whole idea?
Yeah, so we've been sitting on the idea of a side project for God knows how long, probably 2 years, 3 years. And we finally got really serious about it when we just knew we were living right next to each other and we could just make music whenever we wanted to. And
Absolutely.
We kind of realized why are we not putting in all of this energy and all these projects into one master project outside of ourselves, because we both got to this stage of our little careers here where there's radius clauses and we're traveling all the time, and it was just hard to get back-to-backs, Yoko back-to-back, Skinny Limbs. It was just tough to coordinate that. And so when you have a side project that's dedicated to just that and it doesn't have our names on it, we can do whatever we want with it.
Absolutely.
So it's honestly cheating the system in a way, but also just so much more inspiring to be creative with each other. So yeah, a few years in the making for sure. He's just my best friend, so it's a no-brainer, and it's the easiest thing in the world to put my energy into. So we're honestly always joking with each other on stage too.
Yeah.
The amount of times we'll just be do you see that guy in the front row with that horse on his stick, just random stuff. It's really great. Like I said, there's nobody I would rather do it with.
Do you kind of have any sort of vision for Critical Hit, or is it just kind of this is just what you've been wanting to do for a long time now and you're just kind of gonna see where it takes you?
I mean, we'll never box our project into one specific genre per se, but it kind of feels whatever the opposite of the Yoko project is, I want to put into Critical Hit. Critical Hit is for just the songs that get the crowd going. The 140, just every drop, we want the goal of the crowd to be oh my god, what was that? Or just absolutely not even saying anything and just in their own element dancing the night away kind of thing. That's why it's called Critical Hits, a video game reference, So yeah, we're not trying to box ourselves in, but we do have a goal of, getting crowd reaction out of things and just letting people have the craziest night with just the weirdest bass music you can,
So since the start of the Yoko project, you've been able to take the road to different venues across the US, as well as perform in a variety of music festivals. What is your favorite part about going on tour and just kind of traveling to perform in these different unique spaces all across the country?
I love traveling in general, so seeing new cities and scoping them out in terms of, what's their nightlife, what's their food where geographically am I located, do you have beaches that I can check out kind of thing. That's my favorite, just exploring. There's another aspect of being able to travel that has really resonated with me lately, where I've just been able to connect with the teams that are booking me so deeply And just meet so many driven, nice people. A lot of these promoters are on the ground, like digging their heels into everything they do, just trying to make it to the next show kind of thing. You know, it's not like these big corporate promoting companies. Like, these are people doing it out of their own pocket usually, and meeting them is so inspirational. Everybody is just so organically driven just because they love this community and they love the music, and that's the best part. I was just in Mobile, Alabama last week. Never heard of the place before I got there. It is the most like southern point of Alabama.
Yeah, wow.
On the beach. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But the people that I met down there, the whole time I was like, oh my god, like there's a scene out here too. Like, it exists everywhere.
Do you have a favorite track or tracks that you have created? And if so, why are they your favorite?
I would say my favorite that's out would be Recursion off of my new album. Just because that was the first song that I made right after I took a lesson with resonant language. And I just wanted to utilize like all of this newfound knowledge into one area. And I had been dreaming of that ability for like 2 years at that point. You know, I'm like, how do I make halftime? Like, how do I do the experimental stuff and get it to the level that sounds a little bit like resonant language? And that was like liberating, honestly. That one took me probably 3 months, like a course of 3 months to make two. So it was not just one session and, you know, going to celebrate afterwards. It was like coming home after this, that, and the other every day and just grinding until I unlocked that ability. So when I listen to that song, I get thrown back into all of these sessions that I had, like right here, just sweating bullets trying to get that one done. You know, it was a lot, but it really did, like, I proved to myself that I could do it, and I think that's what the best part about it is. And I just love the song too.
It's a great freaking track.
Yeah, it's wild. It is a wild one. But my new favorite song isn't out yet, so I can't really talk about that one.
We will be waiting.
Yeah.
We will be waiting. That's awesome. Yeah, sounds like you're leveling up in the way that you want to be.
Yeah, I think that taking lessons from the people that you admire, their work, you know, exponentially, it's like that is the most important thing if you really want to get after it. And took a lesson with Kyoto taught me a lot. Took one with Res Lang a month later, and after that I was like, I don't need any more lessons right now. I just need to like utilize everything they just gave me. So yeah, it's a liberating feeling. I'm so grateful that they were as open as they were in the sessions. I was like a little nervous, honestly, going in asking the questions that I did, because they were pretty specific, you know, like, how did you make this sound, and how did you get this exact groove? And, you know, I guess some people are a little gatekeepy in that way, but they were all ears for that, ready to just, you know, spill.
So the success of Wake the Dreamer, your second album, is incredible. Can you tell us about your inspirations for this album and the feelings you were channeling as you created it?
Yeah, so that also stems from like the resonant language Kyoto lessons. I just felt so inspired to write everything I could possibly write after those lessons. And so I was like, oh, album time. And I had just seen for the first time the movie Ex Machina. And for some reason, my brain was just like, wow, this could be a whole sonic concept instead of just like the movie itself. And so for some reason, I deep dove into like TED Talks about AI and like robotics and where that's all moving to in this weird age. And yeah, I just got super inspired to write this weird storyline about basically something that stemmed from Ex Machina. So that's kind of why it has this like digital, experimental undertone. And that's why that cover is the same too. It's like this deconstructed like AI head, you know, like this just robotic head. But yeah, the concept was, what if I was like Ex Machina basically? What if I was like turned into this crazy AI robot that was like half half human mind, half like just computer. It's honestly like hard for me to step away from that depth when it comes to creating like larger projects. It's always any EP or album I write, it's because I watched something, saw something, experienced something that I was like, oh, this is a whole story. I could literally write about this for days. So yeah, it's so fun for me. That's the most fun part, is like making it relate to some sort of physical thing that you could make art out of, like a physical art that you can see instead of hear. If it doesn't have that like connection, it's hard for me to really dive deep into it. It was funny, I played in Chicago for the first time a couple months ago, and I was just standing there vibing in the back of the crowd, and this guy comes up to me, he's like, hey, like, your album, Wake the Dreamer, I just gotta say, like, the concept from here to here to here to here, and he, like, his job is like working in AI and like crazy stuff, so his knowledge of all of that was so far past what I have any knowledge about. And he just started spitting these crazy facts. He was like, this is so accurate about like the liquid neural networks going into this, and I'm like, holy crap, you know, like it worked, you know, like I got this, you know, this feeling of like, wow, I guess I really did execute it correctly. But it's awesome because that he doesn't really listen to like a ton of electronic music, but he just came out to see my set because he found the album. And he's like, I just gotta say, like, nobody's doing that right now. Like these crazy scientific concepts about, you know, like the future of technology. And like, dude, this is awesome. Like no, it worked. Yeah, it literally worked. It was just, it felt so good. It was very heartwarming to know that, you know, people get it, or at least there's a crowd that gets it. And
Absolutely.
Can resonate with the storylines and hold on to that.
You talked about it, Wake the Dreamer. It's what is your creative process like? My
process is just wake up early in the morning, drink a lot of coffee or yerba, and just start diving on my computer and seeing what sparks inspiration. Sometimes that's like random vocal samples. Sometimes that's starting on YouTube and looking up infomercials from 1980. Like really random, you know, like it's but the inspiration really stems from like the digging for random stuff. So like even on Wake the Dreamer, there's a whole intro of this old guy doing like a pep talk basically for an hour. I forget like the real name that they had for those, but it was like they had a whole TV channel for this guy, and apparently he's really famous. I did not know that when I like took the audio from it and warped it a bunch, and somebody commented on my SoundCloud, oh my god, is this guy? I'm like, how do you know about that? Like what? He's like, he's super big, like at least back then. I was like, that's hilarious. But I found it because I was digging on YouTube for random junk.
What about being a producer in this scene do you wish you knew earlier on? And what advice would you give to your younger self in kind of pursuing what you were about to pursue?
Wow. I would have to say two things like come to mind instantaneously, and it's you do not have to take every booking. Just make sure like people are respecting your time, energy, and space. And if they aren't necessarily meeting all three of those, you don't need to take that booking. Because I've had some crazy experiences thinking that, you know, it's all, you know, networking and it's all investing in the upward swing of your career. Like, you gotta take those shows. And it's like, no, you really don't. It comes from the music you're putting out. It really does. So like focus on the music first, then comes everything after. So yeah, don't take every booking first. And two, stay off of social media as much as you can. Like, yes, market yourself, be prominent, you know, on your social pages for your project to make sure, you know, you're advertising your shows and your releases and stuff, but you do not need to be on social media every day and every hour of the day trying to connect with people, or even just in the background, you know, trying to stay up to date with the news around the area, because it is so toxic. If you just hop on Twitter one day and, you know, you're following hundreds of other artists and you see X amount of new releases. It's like immediately like, oh my God, I'm falling behind. You know, I'm not releasing this month. Uh-oh. It's just, and you can't think that way. It's just not healthy. You really have to like buckle down and be true to what feels right to you. Don't rush things. Take the time to ask yourself, like, what is my personal preference in terms of, you know, releasing and making schedules for yourself. Because when you hop on social media, it's, oh, this guy got booked again and again and again and again, and so did they, and like, why am I not getting these bookings? Like, you cannot compare yourself. It'll bite you. It'll bite you hard.
Would you have any advice for any other female and queer producers that are just starting out?
Absolutely. I would say first and foremost, the most important thing when it comes to starting your music career is making sure, or at least trying to build on it every day, is building your own community of people that will always have your back and support you in any way, shape, or form. That doesn't mean they all have to be producers and DJs. But just having like a support group underneath you, because being a queer person entering this space is like quite draining at times, especially when you get to the frequency of shows that like I'm currently at. You're constantly traveling to new places that may not be as queer forward and inviting as, say, Denver or you know, LA kind of thing. So having your network of people that you know you can always call and always rely on is huge. It's a huge plus though to have fellow producers that are also in the same boat. A lot of my friends are also queer that are producers, and it just, for some reason, it just makes me feel safe and heard in some interesting times. I would say to people who are trying to get into this or already halfway through, just try to branch out, you know, make friends, make lasting relationships. It helps to also have people outside of the scene so you're not drained by constantly hanging out at a venue or, you know. So, and that's the Denver life. It's draining to want to hang out with your friends, but every time you do, it's inside of a loud venue and having the same conversations over and over every weekend because you can't hear each other very well. So yeah, just branch out. Try to not take it as seriously as possible. This whole game of trying to get on a larger platform with your art, the art comes first. It doesn't need to be your entire life. You know, have other hobbies, have other outlets, have your support system, and hopefully you'll be okay. I've made a rule with myself now that, like, especially as summer's coming, if I'm not playing it, there is a low percentage that I'm gonna be there. Unless it's like my friend that I'm supporting playing, like I'll go and support always, but I would love to hang out with my friends at a restaurant or an art gallery or, you know, something that's not lights and strobes and the loudest sound system in North America kind of thing. Like, you know, you don't need that.
Or poor ears, dog.
Yeah, exactly.
So within each community, you know, specifically talking about the bass scene, you know, you have your positive spaces and you kind of have your negative spaces, you know, your yin and yang. And so specifically with the bass scene, there's spaces of, you know, artistic creativity, positivity, uplifting and supporting people, you know, all the things that we were just talking about. But there are also spaces of kind of intolerance, disrespect, sexism, homophobia, and substance abuse. Substance abuse is a really big one. Have you experienced any of these dark spaces? And if so, just kind of like, how do you deal with them? How do you kind of try to stray away from those darker spaces and stay in the kind of positive light of things?
I've definitely experienced them. I think anybody that lives in Denver and is trying to pursue some sort of musical career is going to be in the thick of it at some point, whether they like it or not. That's just kind of how it is with a very oversaturated community here. And it's not to say that it's like necessarily a bad thing. There's going to be dark and light everywhere you go. But for me, the way that I kind of navigated out of that as much as I could was just really buckling down on the music aspect and realizing it's like not always about networking. Like I don't have to go to every show and to get where I want to be. I can go home and have the reflection that I need to make sure that I am exactly where I need to be, instead of let me go out again even though I'm stone cold tired, you know, worked all week, but I have to go to the show because I know this person's going to be there and I want to, you know, build a relationship with them. It's not about that. First and foremost, you need to make sure that you are building a sustainable track for yourself. And the only way that I was able to get out of like those dark spaces were just like protecting my energy. And even some of my best friends who at the time were, you know, still in those dark spaces themselves, saying like the substance abuse issues or, you know, things that go along that line. It's like sometimes you have to make the space to get away from that, because that's, as much as you want to help them, that is at the end of the day not your job. You know, you can still help them by being healthy yourself and stepping away. So realizing that like there's a distance that can be made between all of this to get right yourself and focus on what really matters to you. I think that was the only way that I got out of that dark hole. It was a trip the first few years that I was here and trying to get into music, because everybody gets so lost, you know. So many people here trying to do the same thing. You feel like you have to do everything in your power to like get an edgewise, and you'll lose it real quick. You know, you'll lose it real quick. You'll find yourself not even accepting, but just in the thick of being mistreated just because you think like, oh, this is a good opportunity. Like just because it's what you think is a good opportunity, if somebody's like mistreating you in any way, shape, or form, it's not worth it at the end of the day. It really is not worth it. So realizing that too was like a huge thing. I think my management helped me realize that a lot. Was like, again, you don't have to take every booking. You don't have to take every opportunity. But all of that combined got me out of that like negative side of the industry. And it very much will always exist. If you ask yourself, like, can I be here sober and still have just as good of a time? And if that answer is no, you should probably work on that a little bit in some sort of aspect. Maybe talk to a therapist in some type of way. But the thing is, like, if you really can't enjoy it with a clear mind and sober to some degree, like, are you really in love with the music? And that's what this community is about in every aspect. The people running the show, the people putting on the music, the visuals, people bartending, you know, like they love the music. And it's just hard. I always just try to ask people that who are, you know, sometimes visibly struggling with that, getting out of that negative space. It's like, you should take that time to reflect, and, you know, I'll even go to a show sober with you. Let's see if we can have a great time. And, you know, if that's just, if you really can't, you get home at the end of the day, maybe music's not your, maybe the electronic scene shouldn't be your thing for a second, you know. Maybe we should get back on track before we try to re-enter that space, because it's a very inviting space for letting loose in terms of, like, you know, drinking, substances, everything. And that's not a bad thing, but it can be abused very quickly. And that's the scary part. I'm not gonna sit here and say, you know, you're not invited in my shows at all. Like, there's a space for you here, but be responsible, you know. Nobody likes to be a liability or take care of, you know, somebody who's visibly in need of some outside help. And it's just we just want safe spaces and we want everybody to have a good time. I know way too many people who come home from shows and they're like, my night was ruined because I had to literally talk somebody down from something, or I had to carry somebody 1.5 miles through this festival because I just found them. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, it's as much as like we're there to help people when the time comes. It's like, it's not necessarily what we want to be doing, you know? So we all want the equal opportunity to have a good time. And that is the best part about it too, because like there are a million people around you that will carry you 1 mile if you're in need of that help. That's the best part at the end of the day. But just try to not get to that point. That's all we're asking. Just be responsible. It's especially in this day and age with the fentanyl issue and everything. It's scary. It's just a scary time.
The majority of the DJs and producers in the bass scene are straight white cisgendered males. This is no surprise or shocker to anybody. Yeah. Especially here in Denver. Can you discuss a time where you felt challenged or discussed kind of a general struggle when it comes to being a queer female producer of color in this industry?
Yeah, there are many small instances where you really get that. There are also like heavier singular moments where I've, had some interesting altercations with, some promoters or somebody who worked at some specific venue. But the overarching like theme that I get, especially traveling, is the second I walk up to a venue for sound check or just to get there right on time for my set, probably 60% of the time, if not more, I think I'm being graceful on that number, I'm met with, who are you? No, you're not the artist. Like, show me your credentials. Like, random things, and it's weird. It's like, if I was a dude walking up here, you probably wouldn't have asked that. There was this one show not too long ago, I won't like name specifics because I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but I was literally standing like right on the side of the stage and I was about to play, and I go up there. There's one security guard in front of the door to the stage, and he's like, oh, I need to see your pass. I pull my pass out. He's like, that's not the right pass. I'm like, this is definitely the right pass. Like, it literally says artist on it. He's like, I can't let you back here. I'm like, I am literally about to play. Like, you're about to make me late for my set. And he's like, I'm sorry, you need the right credentials. And then finally some dude like walks up, who was also on the lineup. And he was like, is he giving you a hard time? I'm like, yeah, I'm literally like about to be late. And he's like, he like pulls out his pass, same pass as mine. And the guy's like, yeah, you can go through. And I'm like, this is the same pass. Like, what's up? And luckily that artist like vouched for me. He was like, dude, you calm down. She's literally playing. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry you're playing. I'm like, I literally told you that 4 times, but it took another white male, cisgender male, to tell you that, to believe me, which was so wild. And it just like threw me off my whole set. Like, I got up there and I was just like, I want to go home. I want to shower and like just forget about that experience. And he was just like really rude to me for the rest of the night. But that happens all the time. Like, that is not just a one-off shoot. That literally happens all the time. And it's just like, what if I was white male presenting? Would I even have to deal with all of this like minute little instances of like, I don't even know what to call it at this point. It's just like, it's frustrating. That's the most wild thing to me. It's like, I really want to know what it's like behind the eyes of that for like a white man in the scene, because they can ask a promoter, oh, I need this, it's taken care of in like 3 seconds. Sometimes it's, oh, I can't get you that, like I can't get you this, but here's this, it's like scraps. Sometimes it's like, what? Why? Like, why, Sometimes I'm like built above these other guys that are getting treated better than me. And it's like, what? Like, what do I need to do in order to just get the basic treatment? Truly, like, common audacity to like treat your artists with respect. It's weird. It's
Yeah,
just weird
exactly.
to experience it. It's definitely a new thing for me. Experience it. I'm still getting through it. I feel like because I'm always traveling to like a place I haven't been. It feels like with like new teams and new promoters, and so you're constantly meeting so many random people. Like that guy wasn't even on tour with us. He was just some random security guard that worked at that venue, you know? It's just, they exist everywhere, sadly, and you just gotta have a tough skin sometimes to like not let that get to you.
I'm with Zafus. I work with Zafus, as you know. So our kind of main mission and our goals with the Zafus project is to kind of, it's two things really, but we're really here to kind of combine two communities, that being the queer community as well as the bass community. We kind of want to fuse the two together. Speaking more on that, you know, we're trying to bring in the theatrics of the queer community to shows. Our first part of the mission is to kind of combine those two kind of ideas, of to kind of mix up the idea of like what you can expect when coming into a bass show. And so we really want to bring those kinds of people up, you know, the painters, the vendors, the flow artists, and every part of the community that, you know, makes the bass scene what it is and makes it such a safe space and makes it so tantalizing for people to kind of like be involved with, because, you know, it's at the end of the day, it isn't just these big sound systems and this like very unique and kind of almost exclusive venue, you know what I mean? It's all these kind of like parts of the scene that are coming together to really make some magic. How does this mission resonate to you is kind of our last question, and kind of what does that mean to you, and why do you think that it is important, if you do think it's important?
It's honestly like the most important and inspiring thing, especially as someone who's on the stage most of the time, because from my perspective, I see lately, the past year or two, playing in Denver especially, other communities not so much, which I've fallen in love with the idea of it, but in Denver, I get this like, especially in a small club setting, I get this like continual experience of, I know I'm having a blast, but when I'm looking at the crowd, all I see is maybe a phone pop up, you know, and like everybody's wearing all black, nobody wants to be perceived. I'm like, what happened to the days of like, you went to shows and you walked out with like 10 new friends kind of thing, you know, like what happened to those days? That's how I got into the scene. I was into like so many other genres of electronic music, but I miss that aspect of something that's engaging besides, you know, people there for the culture, for that loud sound system where they can just zone out. Like I think at this point the scene is like itching for something as your concept for these shows, like the immersion. I think it's itching for that, because at this point there is no going back to the original shows that I had where it was, you can go around and, you know, yeah, we have a massive LED wall, yeah, we have massive sound system, but you can still make friends and have a good time. Like that's gone. I feel like that is just not, especially in Denver, that's just not a thing anymore. And people are pretty cliquey at times. So it's like hard to break through. And I feel like now we just need a fresh vision on what we can do in shows to create this break in terms of, you know, those little cliquey aspects of it, you know, like what can we do to toss up the run of show so that people feel like I don't have to stay in this spot, park it all night right here to save my spot so that, you know, I can zone out and like nobody talks to me kind of thing, you know. For me, it's like super inspiring, and like I'm very excited to see where that goes, because I hope other people catch on to that and see the potential that shows have, you know. As a DJ, I'm never gonna say like, oh, you can't throw, even if I was DJing and you wanted to do like a runway during it, I would never say no to that. That's awesome. I'd be like, more movement, please. Because most people these days are just stagnant, like maybe going like this. It's like, nah, I need activity going on. I want to see like life come back to that building aspect. There's so much to be had, and people aren't capitalizing on it. It's kind of just like we've been complacent to just super loud systems and super bright lights and LED walls, and that's what you're kind of expecting every time you go in. And I think that's why I lost a lot of like momentum to keep going out. Honestly, it's the same thing every weekend. Obviously, like the music changes per artist that you see, which is great. But at the end of the day, it's that same concept, those three things. And we need change. Like,
yeah,
it's
absolutely
exciting. It feels like people's goals are to be like dissociative towards everything that really is going on. Personally, I'm not gonna say you can't come to my shows, but like I'm trying to draw in the crowd that wants to just look like a gay club, basically. Just absolute amazing, beautiful chaos.
Absolutely.
Like I want movement. The music that me and my friends make, it's for movement, to make people move. And when people are actively taking substances to go against that, it's like, dang, like that's not what we wanted. It's kind of disappointing sometimes. I'm just like really glad you're shaking up the system there, because it's so needed. It's so very much needed. And it's not like that everywhere where it's like a dead dance floor, but I have gone out to some other venues and played very close to almost like the same set, like just in different orders, and had such different reactions on the dance floor than I have playing that here. It's really weird. It's kind of sad sometimes, but
whether you know it or not, and I feel like maybe you do, maybe you don't, like you have a huge influence on the underground bass scene in Denver here. Like it's crazy, the waves that you've made, and just like you and Skinny Limbs and Back Left and just like these super young artists that have like sprung out what seems to be like out of nowhere, and like I don't want to diminish your journey and all this, you know what I mean? You obviously put in some freaking hard work, but like you guys are really, I feel like, shaking things up and making a lot of waves in the scene. And so I feel like, what is your take on kind of your desire for where you want the bass scene to go in general, in terms of just, people that are attracted to it, behaviors at a concert, similar to genres of your music that you're putting out, and stuff like that in general?
Yeah, I think overall, I just want us to get back on that track of like the feeling that I had back in 2016 when I was going to shows, and it just, you walk in the venue and you're like eyes wide open, like it's freaking Disneyland for your first time, I just want people to be excited about, engaging again. That's so lost, I feel like, in a lot of communities, and I don't want to like point fingers as to why it feels that way, but I know that it can get to this aspect of people aren't just going to see this visual artist kill it or this DJ. Like the DJ is one thing. I feel like it's all fun and games to, want to go to a show for somebody's set, but I want people to also like come to my shows and other shows because, oh my God, my favorite artist is vending, and like this group is like, this flow group is performing, like I want people to be so engaged in so many different areas that there's such a diverse crowd there that, you can't help but meeting new people and finding new hobbies and inspirations from like many areas. I never want it to be like a four-man game, like the venue, the artist playing, and the visuals and the sound. Like that's cool and all, and there's a scene for that for sure, but that's not how I want it to be for my future, and hopefully not the future of like the community here and the bass scene overall. It's a little depressing when you see the potential of something and then it just fall by the wayside because people just don't want to put in the effort, or they just don't care to, or don't have the resources to do it. And so
I know we have the resources to do it. That's the most inspiring thing. It's like, oh, we're on the right track. And to come back and sit here 5 years later in the future, like, what are we going to talk about? Like, some crazy stuff, right? Like,
absolutely.
Probably throwing full circus events of people like trapezing, you know, like that would be so awesome. You don't have to just focus on one specific thing, right? You can have so many cool aspects going on, and maybe not everyone's going to like it, but hey, that's totally fine. Like, you don't have to like everything, but we're here to entertain.
Absolutely.
You know?
We're here to put on the show.
Yeah, we're here to innovate. Like, I don't want to follow in anyone's footsteps necessarily. I just want to do the most outlandish shit that comes to mind, you know? That's the whole goal.
Yay.
Yay! We did it!
Thank you, Emmy. I
And
appreciate
break.
you. Yay.